So there's a story about the early days of the Mac. And Steve Jobs and the team would often go out for little retreats, right? And when they go out, he'd have these sayings. I think this was about a year before the Mac launched, so January 1983. And he had three sayings. It's better to be a pirate than to join the Navy. Real artist ship. And Mac in a book by 1986. I want to focus on that second one.
Theodore Roosevelt once said, "The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions, and spends himself in a worthy cause, who at best, if he wins, knows the thrills of high achievement, and if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat."
I started on YouTube 15 years ago, and I did it because I had something in me that I wanted to get out. I would make videos because I would follow my instincts. I would do what felt right rather than what someone was telling me I should do. And that's why I kept being creative. I wanted to express myself, and as cliche as that is, it is what drove me, the more I reflect on it. But there was always this countervailing force, I guess, and that was school. Now, school was radical for me. I was very privileged to go to a set of schools that were basically dedicated to challenging the traditional concept of a mass-produced education. And many of my classes played into my intrinsic motivation. Like in high school, I had a film class where I got to direct a movie, and the teacher wasn't really guiding us, he was just giving us the space to do it, and the basic tools and the basic framework, and putting the right people in the right place, and let us loose. I mean, I was not doing that in class for a grade, I was doing it because I loved it. And that's what I mean by my schools being radical, I guess. But there was always kind of this countervailing force, which was the presence of extrinsic motivation in schools, because the reality was that I was going to school and my primary focus was to get into college, and to get into college I needed good grades. And so while I had a lot of space for my intrinsic desires, I was oriented in a direction where extrinsic motivation became more and more present for me. And in high school, it was pretty balanced. But as I got to college, basically all the space for that intrinsic motivation evaporated. I just didn't have space for it anymore. I needed to do good in my classes, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, and things were too hard and too crowded for me to have the room to breathe. At least it felt that way. And ultimately, even though I was privileged enough to be working on a job, two jobs that I loved, one in video and one in education and tech, the extrinsic motivation crowded out my desires. It stifled me. So over time, I stopped posting. I stopped making videos for myself. I only made videos for other people, for other things. I only created things that other people told me to. And I had made the full transition from being completely intrinsically oriented to merely being completely extrinsically motivated. I had kind of lost myself. It was really insidious too. I, at the time, thought that I was intrinsically motivated. I thought I was doing things because I had this bigger goal that I was trying to achieve and that things would sort themselves out in the end. And to be fair, they eventually did, and they will continue to. But looking back, I realized just how the presence of grades, for example, in my classroom, or the need for money or the fear of money influenced me and gave me anxiety and drove my decision making, and that it wasn't me that was making those choices. It was those things external to me. So they made me stop being. And doing should always flow from being. Creating should always flow from being first. And because I wasn't creating, it was a good sign that I wasn't being. And so I stopped. I stopped posting, and I think that is why a lot of creatives end up quitting, is because they stop putting themselves in their work, or they focus too much on what is external to them and fail to put their spirit into the thing that they're creating. They lose sight of what they started for. At least that's what I did. And that brings us back to jobs, right? So he said real artistship when after the Lisa had been released. The Lisa was really the first commercial computer to release with a graphical user interface, the modern interface that every computer we have uses. And he was speaking to the Mac team after he'd been kicked off the Lisa team. And he said real artistship because the Mac wasn't perfect. And it felt like they were a long ways away still, just a year out from launch. They had already missed their deadline. And he said real artistship because he meant it. He meant that, everyone has ideas. Everyone's got ideas. It's sort of selfish to have this idea, right? But very few people truly execute on them. And in the execution, you find yourself, and you find what it is you're trying to create and communicate. But executing isn't enough on its own. You have to put your thing that you created out in the world. Real artistship, right? Because it is the interplay between what the world sees in your work and the work itself that gives your work meaning. And so, if you don't put yourself in the work and the world sees the thing that you created, well, then the world doesn't see you. And everyone wants to be seen. Everyone needs to be seen. Real artistship. I stopped creating because I no longer wanted to be seen. That's what anxiety does. It makes you not want to be seen. You could look at it from an evolutionary standpoint, right? You should feel fear. You should not want to be seen if you feel fear because there's a danger present. The difference was that the danger I perceived was imaginary, right? I didn't look around and didn't see the people who did foster me and loved me for who I was. And so I stopped being who I was because of that. I didn't place myself in a community that valued me for me. And so many years passed without any creation on my end. I attached myself to lofty goals like public education and democracy, revolutionizing the world through tech, right? Doing what I could and putting my head to the ground to help others achieve their goals, right? And I think I know that I'm still committed to those to this day. But all the while, I also, while achieving those goals, those big goals external to me, I had lost, I'm just going to say it again, I had lost why I had started in the first place. And frankly, I had lost myself. And so those years away, I remained anxious because I didn't do anything to put myself out there, to take a risk, to risk spectacularly. And realized that the things I feared were not so scary. But I had to take that leap of faith first. And so I moved away from New York, from my teaching job. I moved into Virginia, and kind of, it was a year of teaching, and I was doing like DoorDash delivery at the time, and I was just kind of scraping by in terms of in a monetary sense. But I promised myself that I was going to take that year as essentially a year to figure out what it was that I wanted to do. It was not intentional. It's a story for another time. But I gave it meaning in that sense that I realized I had to do it, and so I did. And so I spent that year reading and taking notes and listening to podcasts and being with the people I loved. And experiencing the world and the East in particular in a way that I might not get to again because I knew I'd be moving away. And at the same time, I started a blog. This is the most elaborate blog starting story, origin story that I could possibly tell. But I started a blog, I made my own website, and I started writing. And I put stuff out there in the world, not for other people to see. I didn't think anyone would see it. I didn't think even my friends would read the stuff I was writing. It's just about Apple and whatever else I wanted to write about. I did it for myself. I put it out there to say, when I put myself out there, when I put my things out there, when I ship, not only does nothing go wrong, but actually a lot goes really well. And I continue to do that. I just used it as my own little repository for the things I wanted the world to see. And I continue to do that to this day. But fast forward a little bit, and I go back to the world of creativity and of the media and of YouTube in particular. And I have to shout out Benji, my boss. He gave me a chance early on when I was in high school, and he's come back, and it's been really exciting to work with him again. And really, I have found the space through that to start posting here. That's why this channel is called Uncoverage, by the way, is because that was the original project of my blog, an experiment in creativity. And so now you're looking at my video blogs. Last thing I'll say before we go is that I've thought a lot about regret and the different forms that regret takes. And I don't have an answer yet, but one thing I continually wonder about is whether it is better to regret having done something or having not done something. Another way to put it is it worse to regret having done something or having not done something? And of course, it's all context dependent, but most of our regret from not doing things is out of anxiety and out of fear. At least it was for me. And that is a type of regret that is hard for me to live with. Because there's always that counterfactual, right? There's always the what if I did, or what if I could. And for me, it's easier to have tried something and tried hard at it and lived without fear and make sense of your failures than it is to make sense of not trying.
Okay, you guys, let's just break this up. It's nonsense.
My third story is about death. When I was 17, I read a quote that went something like, "If you live each day as if it was your last, someday you'll most certainly be right." It made an impression on me, and since then, for the past 33 years, I've looked in the mirror every morning and asked myself, if today were the last day of my life, would I want to do what I am about to do today? And whenever the answer has been no for too many days in a row, I know I need to change something.